So it's 8:30 here in Vienna. My name is Shirish Ravan. I am from United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, and specifically I work for UN Spider Program, United Nations Platform for Space-Based Information for Disaster Management and Emergency Response. This is the United Nations platform that is basically enabling all the countries to use all types of space-based information in all phases of disaster management. So this is how we support our member countries. Iranian Space Agency is one of the 26 regional support offices of UN Spider program. And this conference, this workshop, United Nations Islamic Republic of Iran workshop on the space technology applications for drought and flood and water resources management is jointly organized and hosted with Iranian Space Agency. So welcome to all participants. I know most of the participants are from Asia, and good morning to them, but there are also some participants from United States where it's early morning, 4 a.m. and in Europe it is morning here again. So welcome to all participants, and I hope with your permission now I will start formally conducting the conference. So you have seen probably the agenda was displayed already before a few minutes, and now we'll officially start the workshop. We start with opening remarks, and the first opening remarks, I'm honored to invite Director of United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, Ms. Simonetta Di Pippo. So, Director, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Shirish, and good morning, everyone. It is really a pleasure for me to welcoming you to the United Nations Islamic Republic of Iran workshop on space technology applications for drought, flood, and water resource management. Let me express my gratitude for the opportunity to share with you some opening remarks to address this event, one that focuses on the importance of space technology to tackle some of the biggest challenges we face today. Research shows that the clear link between human-induced climate change, which further has an impact on unprecedented weather episodes, causing unusual weather pattern and hence leading to unparalleled heat, droughts, cold and wet conditions in various places. The Global Assessment Report 2021, for example, in a recently published special report on droughts, explores its systematic nature and its impacts on the achievement of the Sendai framework for disaster.
I'm very sorry to intervene. Would you like to start camera, or you prefer to be on audio?
I am on camera.
No, you're not visible. Maybe camera is switched off. Or...
No, because I see myself.
Oh,
but also you, I didn't see you on camera.
Okay, then Emma, please, you have to check what is wrong, because I'm on camera.
No, I cannot see you.
Oh, okay. Okay, we'll check it later and we can continue. Thank you. Sorry for disturbing.
No
some
problem.
Technical problem looks like. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Please continue.
So, but I'm clearly on camera because I see myself quite well, at least. The Global Assessment Report, I was saying 2021, for example, in a recent published special report on droughts, explore its systematic nature and its impacts on achievement of the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, the Sustainable Development Goals, and human and ecosystems health and well-being. Okay, now you probably see me, right?
No. I think those who are not speaking, please switch off camera, but we still don't see you.
Okay, I'll continue in any case.
Yeah, please continue.
The report showcases that droughts have deep, widespread, and underestimated impacts on societies, ecosystems, and economies. On the other hand, in the summer of extremes in different parts of the world, heavy rainfalls have triggered devastating floods, causing dozens of casualties. So in addition to the increasing impact of droughts, we also see an ever-growing risk of floods, which have caused in the period between 1970 and 2012 an estimated number of over 1 million deaths. As climate change is increasing the frequency of extreme weather events, drought and floods need to be assessed for risk and mitigated by managing and monitoring water resources by taking full advantage of space technologies. UNOSA, through its UN Spider program and network of regional support offices, including the Iranian Space Agency, is committed to spreading knowledge of and accessibility to the potential of space tools all over the world, particularly to protect communities that are vulnerable to water-related disasters. Besides the growing concerns of droughts and flooding, the focus of the third workshop, water resource management, is becoming one of the critical challenges of our future. And we all know, in all these areas of concerns, the progress we have witnessed in the space industry over the past few years is truly a game changer. More than 3,000 satellites are now operating in space, producing stunning volumes of data, imagery, and underpinning applications and services we could not have dreamt of just a few decades ago. With the focus of this workshop on deepening awareness and understanding of the possibilities offered by space to monitoring floods, drought conditions, and water resource environments, UNOSA, together with the Islamic Republic of Iran, aim to offer a platform open to all to participate and learn, and to promote the adoption of space tools in national policies and practices all over the world to increase resilience to disasters. UNOSA has a long-term relationship with the Iranian Space Agency. In the past, UNOSA and the Islamic Republic of Iran have conducted joint activities in the areas of space applications and space law, which are now resulting into the present gathering. Furthermore, we are also grateful for the support of the Iranian Space Agency in its capacity as a UN Spider Regional Support Office. Since its establishment in 2009, this as a regional support office has held several national and international workshops, training courses, and exhibitions. The Iranian Regional Support Office has implemented several projects in the field of disaster management and emergency response, especially in drought monitoring and forecasting, earthquake damage assessment, and fault movement, and also forest fire detection. Building on these ongoing activities, what do we need more to accelerate actions for tackling the effects of climate change? Well, innovation, science and technology, data and knowledge, resources, international cooperation, solidarity, dedication, and ambition. All of this will allow us to create, sustain, and scale up bold, effective, and affordable solutions. Our activities in space can serve as an inspiration. It is no secret, rather still not well communicated truth, that space operations have a transformative power on society. Satellites facilitate climate action, connect the world, help us understand the state of our planet, and improve well-being across the globe. And especially the list of benefits for addressing water-related challenges is really extensive. Looking ahead, I see no future where space does not play a major role in prosperity and sustainability, and I want to thank all the participants gathered here for bringing their contribution and share their expertise and questions for the benefit of all. I wish you a very fruitful discussion and look forward to seeing the results of adopting space applications to deal with the increasing frequency of climate-related disasters. So thank you very much, and I wish you a constructive and dynamic workshop. Thank you again.
Thank you, Director Simonetta Di Pippo, for your wonderful opening remarks. You have not only outlined critical importance of space in drought, flood and water resources management, but also given reference to Food System Summit, which is one of the most significant initiative, and also outlined very good how association we have with Iranian Space Agency for benefit of this particular region. So thank you so much for your kind time and these opening remarks. The next we have His Excellency Dr. Kazem Gharibabadi, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Islamic Republic of Iran to United Nations and other international organizations in Vienna. So His Excellency, floor is yours.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. Deputy Minister Barari, Mr. Director, dear people, distinguished speakers, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. As odd as it may sound, it has become the new way of greeting in the virtual meetings where participants join in from different time zones. The decision of this workshop was initiated in a meeting between Iran's Minister for ICT and Ms. Simonetta Dipipo, Director of UNOSA, in 2019, before the pandemic. It was meant to build up on the successful experience of the United Nations and Islamic Republic of Iran workshop on the use of space technology for dust storm and drought monitoring in the Middle East region, which was held in 2016. While myself, Mr. People, and our colleagues were working on preliminary arrangements of the workshop, the COVID-19 pandemic broke out and changed our lives. The pandemic itself reminded us to the importance of the space-based applications to address the unexpected challenges that we might face. I cannot emphasize enough on the importance of addressing issues like drought, flood, and water resources management, which constitute the theme of this workshop. The space-based applications related to Earth observation and geospatial data play an important role in supporting disaster risk reduction, response, and recovery efforts through providing accurate and timely information for decision makers. Monitoring floods, drought conditions, and water resource environments using satellite remote sensing technologies have become more essential, in particular for developing countries. The United Nations Platform for Space-Based Information for Disaster Management and Emergency Response, which was established in 2006 under the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, developed solutions to address the limited access developing countries have to specialized technologies that can be essential in the management of disasters and the reducing of disaster risks. It is United Nations Spider's mandate to enable developing countries to use all types of space-based information in all phases of the disaster management cycle, including prevention, preparedness, early warning, response, and reconstruction. We do welcome the fact that expanding delivery and services on space-based information for disaster management, particularly through the United Nations Spider programs, has been reiterated by Madam Director as a strategic priority for UNOSA in 2020 and beyond. The management of natural and technological disasters in all their phases benefits considerably from a space asset through water forecasting and modeling, early warnings, reliable communication, assessing damages, facilitating first aid delivery, or locating those in need. As one of the founding members of COPUS and member of 11 international and regional space-related entities, and while Iranian Space Agency is a regional support office of UN Spider, Iran has always shown its readiness to expand and strengthen cooperation in different space-related subjects. Asia-Pacific is the most disaster-prone region in the world, and managing disaster risks is one of the most complex development challenges in the region and in Iran. To address this challenge properly, cooperation is a key element. I believe that with this workshop and its outcomes, we will be in a better position to foster cooperation in addressing these challenges, and I would like to seize this opportunity to appreciate all the efforts of our colleagues in ISA and UNOSA in order to enable us to gather today and next 2 days to discuss this important subject. I hope that all of you remain safe in this difficult time and experience a productive and fruitful workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador His Excellency Kazim Garibabadi. Wonderful remarks. I know it was efforts of almost 2 years when you had meeting with our office, our director, and we planned this workshop. It was supposed to be in person in Iran, but yes, COVID situation forced us to be online. Nevertheless, I think we are going ahead, and thanks for your efforts and also wonderful remarks. So yeah, as you know, that you said that it is very important subject, and I think if we don't address drought, floods, and water resources, social conflicts also would emerge. So you have outlined all things very clearly. Thank you so much. Before inviting next guest, I would like to tell to all the participants that I know that there is some technical glitch about camera. It seems people are not able to see each other. We'll address this after this session without interrupting this. So please bear with us. Let's go ahead with audio. Whoever see us is okay. And we also, the one more information for this workshop, we have 350 registrations, quite a good number and very good response. So thanks to all participants who have joined this workshop and shown interest in attending this particular workshop. Thank you so much. Our next section of this particular workshop is keynote speech, and I'm honored to invite Dr. Morteza Barari, Head of Iranian Space Agency. The floor is yours, Mr. Barari. Can you hear us, Dr. Barari? Ms. Fateme?
Shush.
Yes, Emma?
Fatime said the first speakers will use the same link. So the first same name. Yeah. Okay.
Now it's okay?
Shall we start again?
Yes, Fateme, can Dr. Barari start his speech?
Yeah, we will start it again.
Yeah, please, yeah.
3, 2, 1.
الرحمن الرحیم به نمایندگی از دولت جمهوری اسلامی
Your Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the government of Islamic Republic of Iran and in the capacity of President of Iranian Space Agency, it is my honor to welcome you all to our virtual workshop on the space technology applications for drought, flood, and water resources management, which is being held in collaboration with the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, UNUSA, for the purpose of elevating the level of knowledge in the use of space technology applications in this regard. I hope this workshop will lead to the development of international interaction, increasing knowledge, promoting space technology applications, and providing international experiences with the aim of benefiting from space technology advantages for all member states. In view of this, the Islamic Republic of Iran is strongly determined to engage actively with other member states on the follow-up of the UNUSA objectives. The environment as a commonwealth and heritage of the entire humankind and the constant guarantor of man's survival has been seriously damaged and devastated as a result of excessive use and mismanagement of resources across the world. A situation that has caused massive drought, flood, shortage of water resources, and pollutions inflicting irreparable damage and jeopardizing seriously human life on Earth. Meanwhile, the space industry as a highly strategic industry can help countries to manage the natural and environmental hazards and mitigate the related side effects. Space technology can help the crisis management system throughout the whole disaster management cycle by providing timely, accurate satellite data, and this will make the saving process successful. Given the achievement of this Iranian Space Agency in recent years in the development of knowledge-based businesses and making infrastructure for the formation and progress of many space startups for development of Earth observation systems, including 15 specialized and applicable systems in the fields of monitoring sand and dust, air pollution, forest fires, disaster management, monitoring strategic agricultural products, water, land, and natural resources monitoring, we are ready to share these services with other countries through the knowledge-based businesses. Some measures and activities conducted by our country in this field of space are identifying national priority issues in the space field and finding innovative solutions, designing and building remote sensing satellites, establishing a Space Data National Center, Earth Observation Monitoring Center, and receiving data stations, and holding workshops in this regard. To increase the practicality and reduce of costs and risks, it is necessary to globally manage different space data which is collected in enormous quantities and to share them appropriately with other countries by taking into account the requirements of managing natural risks. There's a variety of examples of international frameworks and agreements in the field of natural disasters, such as the Paris Agreement in 2015 on the reduction of climate change, 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, in which 17 goals were agreed and 169 targets were defined, and Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, 2015-2030, focusing on subjects like understanding disaster risks and enhancing disaster preparedness. Iranian Space Agency is always ready to develop constructive interactions with the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs for participation in the progress of the program. Flood monitoring of Kuzastan province has been an example of the activities of this office in 2016. With the occurrence of unprecedented floods in late April 2016 in Kuzastan province, this office succeeded in preparing the flood satellite maps by receiving various satellite images with a spatial resolution of 1 meter to 1 kilometer and provided them to relevant organizations, including the Ministry of Energy and the National Disaster Management Organization in Iran. So far, various workshops and training courses have been held in the field of remote sensing by the Iranian Space Agency. The international workshop on the use of space technology for dust storm and drought monitoring in the Middle East region is one of the programs of the Iranian Space Agency, which was held in Iran with the participation of the United Nations on November 5th to 9th, 2016. In this workshop, in addition to presenting specialized lectures, 3 working groups were held on the space technology applications in drought and dust monitoring, training, capacity building, and regional cooperation. Moreover, ISA has had a national activities and developments as well as international cooperation with the UN and Asia Pacific Space Cooperation Organization, APSCO, in the field of sustainable development, disaster management, and risk reduction. Considering the conditions and requirements of the country and using the capacity of international cooperation with other countries and in the form of a joint venture, the participation and cooperation of all actors in this field are welcomed. Using the experiences of other disaster-prone countries can prevent major catastrophes in Iran and the region. It is obvious that the Islamic Republic of Iran will plan for the space sector of the country with a realistic view and under the conditions of the country and according to the legal requirements in the upstream documents, as well as local facilities and needs of the country. And the final words is, with the cooperation of the UN, regional countries, and space research centers, we are well prepared to create a comprehensive system for monitoring drought and flood. We hope that this cooperation leads to useful, tangible results. In the end, I appreciate all the excellencies and participants in charge of this workshop and wish them health and success. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Burari. First of all, thank you for being a great supporter to plan this entire workshop, and also your ever readiness to support activities of UN Spiders since over a decade. You also mentioned our past workshop on dust and storm, and I think, yeah, all these activities are really very, very useful in enhancing regional cooperation, and under your headship, Iranian Space Agency is contributing a lot to the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, and we will keep enhancing this cooperation. So thank you for your kind words. Our next speaker is Ms. Fateme Fereduni, Center for International Relations and Cooperation from Iranian Space Agency, and she has been the national focal point for organizing this workshop along with my team here, myself, Ms. Alice, and Yuan Gao, Emma, that you must have received emails from Emma. So Fateme has taken really lots of efforts to put, kind of fixing nut and bolts for this workshop. So thank you, Fateme, for taking such efforts, and I offer floor to you for your keynote speech. Over to you.
Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It gives me great pleasure to extend to you all a very warm welcome on behalf of Iranian Space Agency, and to say how grateful we are that you have accepted our invitation to convene this conference. Particular thanks go to the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs that honored us by supporting the event. The theme of this event reflects growing concerns on developing and enhancing our citizens' quality of life. It is an opportune time to renew contacts and discuss our mutual objectives to achieve this aim in a spirit of true cooperation. Holding a joint workshop with UNOSA entitled "A Space Technology Application for Drought, Flood, and Water Resources Management" has been proposed that highlighted the urgency of inter-regional collaboration to overcome these challenges in the region and the whole world. It is worth mentioning that hosting member states undergo some particular processes for holding any joint workshops with the UN in their countries. All arrangements reading these events have also continued with the kind collaboration of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. Hereby, on behalf of Iranian Space Agency, I profoundly thank the UNOSA Director, Ms. Simonetta Di Pippo, and her colleagues, Dr. Shirish Rawan and his professional team. We believe the conference can become an opportunity for progress which cannot be without technical scientific research and action-oriented efforts. Distinguished participants, we are honored to have a group of the best international specialists with us in this workshop, like participants from UN Office for Outer Space Affairs, United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, the Food and Agriculture Organization, World Bank Group, Remote Sensing and Space Sciences Office, National Disaster Reduction Center of China, participants from more than 45 countries, and also different Iranian organizations and universities, such as Ministry of ICT, Ministry of Energy, Atmospheric Science and Meteorological Research Center, University of Tehran, KN2C University of Technology, Khavaran Institute of Higher Education, private sector, as well as other organizations and research institutes. Ladies and gentlemen, although it is still quite difficult to predict some of flash disasters, such as earthquakes, landslides, volcanoes, and avalanches, due to the limited human knowledge, predicting some of them can be a great help in saving the lives of many people. After the crisis, one of the main and most important tasks to reduce casualties is disaster management and monitoring in a way to help the injured people in the fastest time and with the highest quality condition. The first and most important condition for disaster management, both before and after a disaster, is to have information, accurate and timely information on the location, extent, point in time, magnitude of the event, and the estimation of possible damages. It can be said this information is one of the vital conditions to manage a disaster. Over the past 10 years, about 80% of the world's natural disasters have been caused by floods, droughts, sand and dust storms, and global warming. One of the most reliable and fastest resources to obtain relevant data with a wide range of point of view is spatial data. Satellite images are the most suitable option for natural disaster management due to their great variety, fast and cost-free repetition, extensive and integrated coverage, high reliability, and high processing speed. Whether in countries with water resources shortages or in those not currently having major water problems, surface and groundwater management is critical. Space technologies make it possible for humans to monitor and analyze soil moisture, atmospheric moisture, area and volume of surface water, water pollution, amount of oxygen in the water for the life of aquatic organisms, amount of polar ice and its melting, rainfall forests, the amount of snow in the mountains, agricultural water consumption, and so on. Distinguished participants, to prepare remote sensing services and data added values in the country, the Iranian Space Agency, as a regional support office of UN SPIDER, has various projects to develop applications and establish necessary infrastructures, some of which have been fulfilled and some of to be fulfilled. Space technologies capabilities in the management of natural hazards have increased so that today states have concluded various space-based memorandums and conventions at the national and international levels. In Islamic Republic of Iran, there is a cooperation agreement at the national level. It has been signed between the Iranian Space Agency and the National Disaster Management Organization, which is stated in Article 1. This agreement is intended to develop and provide practical services throughout the crisis management cycle and using space technology for national hazards such as drought, forest fires, flood, environmental pollution, geological hazards, sand and dust storms to crisis management. Although in the framework of this agreement, the Iranian Space Agency on behalf of the National Disaster Management Organizations cooperates with international charter space and major disasters. Ladies and gentlemen, the Iranian Space Agency declares its full readiness for joint international cooperation, whether through defining joint projects or developing capacity building, aiming at the proper management of water resources in the West Asia and on a global scale. You carry with you the best wishes of Iranian Space Agency for productive and successful deliberations. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Fatemeh. Anyone speaking from there? Thank you, Ms. Fatemeh. This is a wonderful remark, and you nicely summarized number of countries and organizations participating that exhibits how diverse participation is coming from all over the world and organizations for this particular workshop. The most striking thing you mentioned is the ongoing cooperation between Iranian Space Agency and National Disaster Management Organization. This is what exactly we aim for in all the countries, that Space Agency and Disaster Management Agency in the country should work together for building resilience and coping up with emergencies if they arise. So thank you for nicely outlining all these important elements. So next is my turn to, basically I will try to set the context for this workshop, and then we will go into the regular sessions. So please allow me to share my slides. Since I'm the first one to share the slides screen, Emma, I'm asking if it's visible to you, and also Fatima, if you please let me know if in Iran also it's visible now.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, good. Then I will proceed with my setting the context. So as everyone knows that this workshop is jointly organized by United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs and Iranian Space Agency. And to begin with, just I spent few seconds in introducing the office. So our office is based in Vienna, Austria, within the UN headquarters here. Along with our office, we are co-located with International Atomic Agency and United Nations Industrial Development Organization and United Nations Office for Drugs and Crime. So there are several offices in Vienna. Our office focuses on bringing benefits of space to humanity, and our mission statement is to promote international cooperation in the use of outer space to achieve sustainable development goals. So through my presentation, I will not only address what we are doing in this particular workshop, but also what are the capacity building opportunities we are offering through UN OSA and UN Spider program, basically in building disaster resilience. So everyone knows that this is pandemic time. I think world has not seen this in hundreds years, this kind of situation. And this has seriously impacted the world economic situation and also the progress of sustainable development goals. So United Nations is using this very important instrument. This is called High Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. So this hosts meeting once a year at the ministerial level. There's a ministerial segment along with so many other stakeholders contributing in reviewing the progress of sustainable development goals and also advising how we should progress better. And once in 4 years, the meeting is also a high level political forum is also planned at the head of state level. And this really ensures the commitment from all the countries in the world towards the implementation of 2030 agenda for sustainable development. And because we are in the time of pandemic, this year's theme was the forum that was held in July 6 to 15 July. The theme was sustainable and resilient recovery from COVID-19 pandemic that promotes the economic and social and environmental dimensions of sustainable development. So this is basically for accelerating 2030 agenda for sustainable development. And why I'm talking of this pandemic, because pandemic, the drought, floods, water resources, or any disaster, it kind of causes cascading effects. First, we are in a pandemic that has seriously impacted us, and then the natural disasters are also impacting us. So taking advantage of this particular forum, our office, United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, is part of this particular high-level political forum. We contributed a study paper and also organized learning session on 7th of July, just about a month ago, on integrating indigenous knowledge and emerging space technology solutions for building resilience towards sustainable development goals. And this effort we are doing with Fund for Indigenous People in Latin American Caribbean, and also there is one NGO in Canada called Kenyas. So together we are progressing on this particular topic. So you can see that we are the voice for space technology solutions in advancing sustainable development goals in high-level political forum, especially highlighting how we can do better during the time of COVID-19 pandemic. All of you probably know, those who work on in the areas of drought or any other disaster management. That very significant report has come out recently. It's called Global Assessment Report, and it's a special report on drought. It's called Report on Drought 2021. And I think this report is really changing the way we looked at the drought, the way we assessed. And after my presentation, we have a person from United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction who would be presenting details of this particular drought report. But I would like to just highlight here that this particular report is also highlighting the link between COVID-19 pandemic and how drought is affecting all the societies and economies. And one of the significant observation is drought is negatively affecting the achievements of the global agreements, and risk reduction should be heart of accelerating action towards all these global agreements. And the most important agreements, all of you know, that 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, Paris Agreement related to climate change, Convention on Biodiversity, Biological Diversity, Convention to Combat Desertification, and New Urban Agenda, and others. So drought does have impact on that, is the observation, and we look forward for that presentation from United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, because the very significant segment of this workshop is devoted for drought as well. There is something, another significant initiative happening nowadays, that is Food System Summit. And our director, even Osa, she already made a reference to Food System Summit. So what's happening is disaster, basically drought, floods, of course, many other disasters, but we see seriously droughts and floods, they take heavy toll on agriculture and related food systems like crops, livestock, forestry, fisheries, and agriculture. And the victims are least developed countries or lower income countries. They are the most affected. And now we are left with 10 years for implementation of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and Secretary General of United Nations has launched this very ambitious summit, Food System Summit, with aim of really engaging wide stakeholders in ensuring the secure food systems. So this food, there's a big relation, great relations between disasters and food security, or the relation of disaster management sector with the food systems. What has happened, that Food System Summit has been a process. Basically, they hosted a lot of dialogues and parallel sessions, and in September they have actual summit. So it is a part of decade of action to achieve sustainable development goals. This summit will launch a bold action towards delivery of progress on 17 sustainable development goals. And if you look at this very interesting website they have built on Food System Summit, there are 5 action tracks, and just by reading these tracks you can understand how relevant these are for disaster managers and also to space technologies. So track 1 is talking about ensuring access to safe and nutritious food for all. Track 2 is about shift to sustainable consumption patterns. Then track 3 is boosting nature positive production. This talks a lot about how to conserve biodiversity and all that. Action track 4 is about advance equitable livelihoods. No one should be left behind. And track 5 is build resilience to vulnerabilities, shocks, and stress. I think this particular action track 5 is very, very relevant for disaster managers. Why I'm bringing this here? Because it is really a significant initiative, and all disaster management should take part in all the aspects of this Food System Summit. And at UNOSA, what we have done to contribute to this Food System Summit is we were part of the Food System Summit Global Dialogues, and on 31st May, we hosted the Global Dialogues with almost like more than 500 persons listening to it. Then on 26 July, we conducted pre-summit parallel session, and the dates probably for main summit are, I think, from 13 September. It will appear in on the website very soon. So There will be launch of global initiative that we are thinking of, and we are doing this again with two organizations that I mentioned, PHYLAC and Kenyas. And our focus is integrating indigenous knowledge with emerging technologies to enhance sustainability and resilient food system. So again, we are trying to advance the space technology, but not just space technology in isolation, but also with other emerging and frontier technologies. How that can be integrated to space. So that's the focus, and we are bringing these particular aspects into Food System Summit. Also from 7 to 9 September, we have workshop on symposium, United Nations and Graz Symposium on space applications for food systems. So this is the way we are engaged into this particular very important initiative called Food System Summit 2021. And as I said, relevance of this particular workshop is to the United Nations Food System Summit, is to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, because you can see we have three important components in this workshop: drought, and all of us know that drought causes significant damage, but we are seriously basically underestimating it when we evaluate it. So when we look for how much we lost economy and wealth, we lost drought, there are no clear figures, and that is what GAR report is now advising. And I think this situation will change with more keen observation and monitoring of the droughts and also mitigation measures. The second sector of this particular workshop will be focusing on the floods. And all of us know, again, I'm referring to the Food System Summit and food security. 60% of agriculture damages are contributed basically to flood. So floods are causing 60% of agriculture damage, and that seriously impacts the food system. So that is why we have a very good relevance of this workshop to Food System Summit. And the most important aspect is also water. Water is very, very precious. Each drop of water is precious, and because if you go through this particular report, United Nations World Water Development Report, it states that 6 billion people will suffer from clean water scarcity by 2050. And when it comes to again agriculture, I think agriculture consumes 70% of the total water, and water scarcity directly impacts food security and exacerbates poverty and hunger. And this seriously impacts us advancing the sustainable development goals. Therefore, this particular workshop we are organizing to share all the experiences and how we can really contribute to all these sectors by making effective utilization of space-based technologies. Just taking a look at the decadal statistics on disasters. Again, this is compiled by UNDRR and the 20 years before 2000 and 20 years after 2000. And you can see that we are developing very fast. World is developing, but at the same time, disasters are also increasing. Number of reported disasters are very, very high. And that really gives us alarm that our development should be more resilient, which is already addressed in Sendai framework. But this is a very critical topic I would like to highlight through this particular slide. And if we look at the again similar trends 20 years before 2000 and 20 years after 2000, one can see that floods, the disaster events related to floods have increased significantly, and storms also increased significantly. Now, what this clearly mentions, also there is recently news that the Paris Agreement and all related climate conferences, they are really bringing out now serious warning. And climate change is the one. These are climate related disasters, storm and floods, and they are increased significantly. It means climate change is bringing more frequent disasters, and that is going to affect the advancement of our 2030 agenda for sustainable development. So climate change becomes again critical area, and this is where we say that space technology comes to help for contributing in all phases of disaster management. And most of you are aware that when we talk of space technology, it's about Earth observation that monitors the disaster or even identifies the underlying disasters, which is also priority of Sendai Framework 1. Satellite meteorology is a lot useful in weather forecast and early warning. And then when it comes to the collection of location-based information, we talk of satellite-based global navigation systems and satellite communication. In most of the disasters, first thing happens is that area goes out of communication, and that's where satellite communication comes in picture. But satellite communication as such is very critical on daily basis for our communication. So these are the space technologies, and our different speakers will speak on each of these technology. And to help advancing this use of space technology in disaster management, we have this platform called United Nations Platform for Space-Based Technology, Information for Disaster Management and Emergency Response. Almost we have completed more than 10 years for this platform, and our aim is to ensure that all countries have access to and develop capacity to use all types of space information to support full disaster management cycle. And this is a typical disaster management cycle. Disaster happens and we need geo information for rapid mapping and seeing extent. Then we come to response, where we really need post-disaster assessment also. And then recovery, where Sendai framework priority 4 addresses building back better. This is where we also need a lot of information. And when we talk of prevention and mitigation, which is a constant attention that we need to provide, we need geo information or space-based information for hazard, exposure, vulnerability, and risk assessment, just to know the underlying disasters. This phase is very, very important, and that's how we get into preparedness. And this is where early warning systems, where space-based systems are critical part of all early warning system. So this is how we look at the space-based information and the phases of disaster management. Sendai framework is at the center of our effort, not for only UN Spider, but I think all national disaster management agencies, intergovernmental agencies, the scientists, space agencies that are supporting disaster management efforts, all of us keeping the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction at the center. What we do with countries, we build technical advisory missions with the country. You can see the photographs and glimpses from several countries that we go with the team of experts, and we do in-depth assessment of the situation, and we provide policy relevant advice, as well as we identify capacity building needs of the countries. We also host a lot of workshops and conferences to bring space technologies and disaster management people together and try to bridge them together. So we also continuously help countries to introduce the text related to space-based technologies into their national DRR strategies. That is very, very important, because by 2020 all countries were supposed to have their national and local disaster risk reduction strategies, and we have tried to advocate that please include space-based technologies in your national strategies, DRR strategies, so that it goes into the implementation and policy building. Of course, access to Earth observation data is very, very important. If you know that, okay, you can count some 20-30 countries that have their own satellite and space programs, not the rest of the world. And this is where it is very important that how we can provide access to Earth observation data to countries that are not spacefaring. So this is how we are trying to help in implementing Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, and thereby addressing these sustainable development goals, which you can see on the bottom of this slide. I just talked in my first slide about high-level political forum, where we organized learning session, and I conducted a quick poll with over 500 people, and the question was, what is the key factor to enhance role of high technologies such as Earth observation in reducing inequalities? And the topmost voting goes for enhanced skills and capacity. And this is quite relevant. We need better access to data. We need enabling policy environment. We need awareness among decision makers to support space technology initiatives, but also most important is skills and capacity building, because people in the government who are managing disasters or responding in emergencies, they keep changing within the government agencies, and knowledge and skills go away with them. And space technology also advances in very high speed, and therefore we need to have continuous efforts on skills and capacity building. And this is where I bring few slides to address what UN Spider is offering as a capacity builder. We are continuously organizing training courses on Earth observation in disaster management. If you go to our knowledge portal, which I will highlight little later, you can find procedural guidelines, recommended practices, massive open online course, and also we are offering long-term postgraduate diploma and master courses, and also some centers, they also support PhD courses. through our United Nations affiliated regional centers for space, science and technology. I have specific slide on it later. Just to highlight on the massive open online course, taking basically advantage of this pandemic situation, we launched this massive open online course, which have two models. Basic model can be done by anyone who is not disaster management manager or even the space technologist. It just generates a lot of awareness on how Earth observation and other space technology contribute to disaster management. And track 2 takes you into advanced model, which is more for people who want to build their skills in using the tools and technology related to Earth observation. And this we launched on the National Disaster Reduction Day on 13th October in 2020, right in the mid of pandemic. And this, thanks to all these organizations who have contributed to this massive open online course on geospatial applications for disaster risk management. With their help, this course reached to almost 30,000 participants from 104 countries in its first phase, which was open until the end of January of 2020. And 11,000 plus almost 12,000 participants completed this course. We reviewed all the feedback from almost like 12,000 participants submitted the feedback, and there was demand that we should open it again. So we did some more enhancement and we opened the course. So my request to all the participants who are attending this particular workshop, please, with this our presentation will be provided to you. You can use this link or you can just Google this particular link and register for this capacity building program. It's a free self-paced learning massive open online course. I think you will find it quite worthy attending that course. On our knowledge portal, which is unspider.org, you can find lots of resources for learning the way to monitor the drought. So here are a few names I have mentioned. There are click by click, you can go through the particular softwares, and there is also sample data, and using that those political resources, you can learn on how you can monitor drought using the different methods, basically Earth observer methods. And you can also see these particular recommended practices are built on free and open software tools like Google Earth Engine, RStudio, NV software, and so on. So here is the link where you can click and access those particular, and the Iranian Space Agency has also contributed one of such practice here. For flood, because our workshop talks of flood also, on the flood we also have big number of such similar resources, recommended practices using Quantum GIS, HECRAS, and Google Earth Engine, and all these our recommended practices are related to disaster preparedness, exposure mapping, flood hazard assessment, flood mapping, or radar-based flood mapping, or even use of digital elevation data for storm surge. So you can see variety of such practices are available. Again, thanks to all these our regional support offices, they have contributed, and this is another good resource for those who want to enhance their skills by going through these recommended practices on flood. So click by click methodologies, again, you will find it here, very detailed explanation. As we said in the beginning, water is a very, very critical sector now, and therefore our office has built a portal called Space for Water portal. So if you click on this particular spaceforwater.org, this portal that has been built with support from Prince Sultan bin Abdulaziz International Prize for Water. This is the stakeholder platform for interdisciplinary knowledge exchange, and it's making information on space-based solution and technology for water-related topics discoverable and filterable. It's also capacity building platform. So if you are doing some studies and some work related to water using any kind of space technology, please get onto this platform and contribute your study here, because this is where I think a lot of people will be visiting, and the expert can get connected with each other for this particular platform. As I was mentioning in related to capacity building slide, we have 6 regional centers across different continents in the world, and they offer long-term postgraduate diploma programs and master courses in remote sensing and geographic information system, satellite communication, satellite navigation, satellite meteorology, space law, and also they organize short courses on specific themes, and financial support and fellowships are also offered. I know a lot of persons from Iran have gone to the center in India and probably in China as well to take benefit, and there are probably hundreds of participants have been trained for the last 20-25 years in each country. And what unique feature of these courses is that it's not like a university course. It's built for basically officials working on job, so they can be deputed to the centers, take the training, go back and start operational programs using this knowledge, or build remote sensing programs if they're academicians. So I invite you to visit the websites of these centers. You can just query on regional centers of UNOSA and you can find this and take benefit of these particular centers. Emergency response is also a very important topic, and as our Iranian colleague Ms. Fatemeh was mentioning that about international charter, and there are also other mechanisms called Copernicus Emergency Management System or Sentinel Asia that specifically built for benefiting Asia region. They all support emergency response, and we are member of all these particular mechanisms, and we access basically we give or try to facilitate access to pre and post event earth observation images and support rapid response mapping with help of those particular mechanisms. We also have agreement with some private important space industry entities here like Maxar or Airbus, and time to time we contact them to support emergencies. So you may also take benefit, interact with us to take advantage of these mechanisms. The most important is the technical advisory missions, and here through the case of Mongolia, we can say demonstrate that almost we engage with the countries for 8, 9, 10, 12 years. So here in this Mongolia case from 2014 until now, we offered them technical advisory mission. We continuously build capacity and awareness raising in the decision makers. We assess the progress in between, and then we reinforce our capacity building through our physical presence of our consultant and working with other stakeholders. And as a result, you can see the National Emergency Management Agency of Mongolia that initially did not have too much focus on space is now has now submitted application for becoming authorized user of international charter, space and major disaster. They're talking of national spatial data infrastructure, and a lot of space-based initiatives have been initiated in the country within this time, and we are supporting these initiatives. So count on us for long-term relationship with your country so that we can continuously build the capacity and raise awareness among your decision makers for employing space technologies in disaster management. And this is my last slide. Before closing, I would like to highlight some of the important initiatives of UNOSA. And you know, gender mainstreaming is very, very important these days, and that's why we have space for women. Then several countries lack the facilities to access the space, basically exploration related facilities, and this is where we offer these facilities through Space for All. We involve space youth in our initiatives through Space for Youth program. If you have done something good and you are young professional, you can post stories on our websites through Space for Youth program. We are also giving attention to Pacific now, UN Sparta program I just explained. Also, we are now space law. We are a very important actor, and several countries are approaching us to basically strengthen their space law through workshops and conferences. Space economy is our initiative, a new initiative, and also we are secretariat for International Committee on Global Navigation Satellite System. So each one of you have GPS in your mobile phone, but this committee works on the interoperability and this cooperation to bring benefit of navigation systems to everyone. Space for water I already explained. Space for climate action and space for global health. This is very important because of COVID. We learned lots of lessons, and we are now exploring how space can strengthen in this health sector. So these are some of our very, very important capacity building initiatives which will contribute to advancing the progress in 2030 agenda for sustainable development. So with this workshop, we are expected to enhance our partnership with member states and regional and international organizations within the region, or focusing on the Western Asia region. Of course, it's open for all the rest of the world. Basically, to utilize space technologies in disaster risk reduction, start new initiatives in the region under UN Spider program, and engage in other initiatives of UNOSA, which I just presented. So I think with that, I close my presentation. I see I'm delayed by 5 minutes, but probably I started a few minutes late also. so we can just recover this time. So thank you for your attention. And with that, we have now session one. And session one, probably you have already seen the agenda. Come back to my. Okay. We have session one, and that is on national, regional, and international initiatives for flood and drought monitoring, which I will moderate. We have 3 presentations. And if you have gone through agenda, you will see how sessions start from those initiatives and then get into details of technical aspects of the workshop. And finally, we will have last session that is more the interaction between the stakeholders within Iran, and others can also participate. So we'll go from basically policy related presentations to technical and then cooperation, the coordination. So without losing much time, I would like to invite Mr. Adam Paish from United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction to present a very important topic, Global Assessment Report, Special Report on Drought 2021. So Adam, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Shirish. Good morning to everybody. Alice, I see that you have a presentation prepared. Can I present from my own screen?
Yes, sure. I will let you present.
Do you see my screen now? I'm sharing.
Yeah, we see your screen. Yeah.
Okay, super.
No, yeah, wait, it's blowing now.
Is it going full screen?
Yeah, okay, good. Although it is a bit smaller, but yeah, it makes sense.
It's okay now?
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Well, thank you very much. My name is Adam Fish from the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. I appreciate the chance to meet you, to discuss with you today. As Shirish said, and as a couple of the speakers earlier on have mentioned, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction Special Report on Drought. We are the custodian agency of the Sendai Framework, which you've heard a little bit about. And as part of the mandate of doing this, we present every 2 years, or every 3 years now, the Global Assessment Report, sort of a state of the art, a snapshot of the state of global disaster risk in the world. Over the past 10, 15 years, this report has evolved considerably. And in the recent years, we've started to create an interstitial middle level report, which is called the Special Report. Each special report will have a special theme, a different theme. And in order to highlight what we understand to be the systemic nature of drought risk, in that it's not simply a hazard risk, but there's a lot of other elements associated with it. We used the GAR 2019, the Global Assessment Report 2019, as a sort of springboard, and then using the theme of drought in the special report, begin to open up doors about different ways to think about risk as not being a purely hazard-related problem and not being a purely, I guess, categorizable problem, but rather something that is complex and does cascade. The slide did change, I hope, yeah? We'll see. This image is from the GAR main report in 2019. And it's really just meant to highlight that a number of elements in our current context, like global warming, like inequality, that are sort of daily events, are gradually compounding and becoming more and more serious, more and more compressed, and more intense, such that events of the type in the second tier of this cascading event become the building stressors, trade complexity and droughts and heat waves. And those are becoming compressed and more intense and more expanded. And we're getting events that used to be much rarer, like crop failures and price spikes and water conflict and involuntary displacement, happening more and more frequently and becoming compressed themselves. And all of these things can, I guess this is a demonstrable way of the way that they can start to basically tumble into global catastrophic systemic risk. This is an example about food systems, but I think COVID is a fairly clear example of other kinds of risk that are compressing and concatenating across different driver types in ways that we didn't really expect. And that goes for drought as well as for flood, as well as for industrial accidents and others. There are so many interconnected drivers of risk that we've not been thinking clearly enough about their interconnections and really trying to become increasingly specific and clear on the geophysical drivers and not thinking enough about the social or the political drivers. So the idea is really that we need to be getting below the clouds. We need to be thinking not just about failing infrastructure or financial crisis or food security as isolated from those other elements, but starting to see into the context and into the drivers. And that's really the evolution that we've been working on in these global assessment reports, getting away from saying geophysical risk is this, hydromet risk is this, economic risk or social risk is this. They really are all interconnected. And as much as it's not a friendly thing to say, COVID-19 has really done made it really easy to talk about how interconnected risk is. That's the reason why we are all sitting in our respective kitchens or why we're wearing masks when we go out in public, is because these are all interconnected. We were not responsible for what happened that caused the disaster to happen, or maybe we all were.
Adam, can I just interrupt?
Certainly.
I see some messages. They see wrong PPT.
You see what?
I see the right presentation, but some of the participants, they say they are still seeing the old presentation and not the right one, but I can see it correctly. Just want to confirm with Fateme, do you see the correct right presentation here?
You should see some clouds, some mountains and some clouds.
Okay, I think we can go ahead. At least I see it well, but some participants are thinking it's a wrong PPT. But
no, this is the wrong PPT actually. This is the wrong one.
Reload to display presentation.
I'm going to switch the slide. No, this is the wrong one. Let me share again, please.
Okay. Emma, you see correct one, right?
No,
Dr.
currently no.
It's
Okay,
clear.
yeah.
Do you see it now?
There's no problem. It's clear. Thank you.
It's clear. Okay. Okay.
Do you see the notes page or the full presentation page now?
Right now we see the normal PowerPoint, not the presentation mode.
Okay, so now I switch to presentation. It's clearer?
No, we still see the old, the normal presentation, not the. Now we see some Word file.
Let me, because I'm showing the page. I'm sorry. Let me switch this and try this one.
For me, it's clear now. Now you have blown up the slide in full presentation mode, and it's how can systematic nature of risk to be addressed.
Yes.
Okay, good.
It's clear.
Should be fine, I hope. Let's go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Should I go back to the previous slide then?
I think it's okay. You can just recap in a few seconds and we can go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So in this one, we are talking about how can...
Excuse me, Mr. Shirish.
Please go ahead.
Yes. Yes, Fateme.
Mr. Shirish?
Yes, I can hear you.
Is it possible that participants could see the image of the lectures while delivering on the corner of the screen?
Yes. So presenter has to start camera. So it will be. Okay, it comes on the bottom. Okay, please go ahead. Yeah. Thank you, Adam. Sorry for interruption. Are you speaking, Adam?
Pardon me. Thank you. Do you hear me now?
Yeah, very well. Please go
Good.
ahead.
As I was saying, I think that the question then becomes, how should we address the systemic nature of risk? If risk is more than just hazard, if risk is a function of our behavior and our decisions and our politics and everything else, how do you solve that? And one of the problems I think is that thinking about the past as a reliable indicator of the future is really dwelling in those clouds of metrics and data and missing the context. And it's harder to do to accept that there's a lot of uncertainty and that we don't live in a clockwork machine of each piece is connected to each piece in a discrete and a discernible way, that it can be separated into components. We need to be more honest in a way about thinking about how our systems interconnect with each other in the way that our identities do, in the way that our political systems do. So we have been partnering with the International Science Council, the Integrated Research on Disaster Risk Reduction, Global Science Networks, and so on, to try to connect, yes, national and local disaster risk reduction in the advancement of the Sendai framework, as you see here, but then also to, the slide doesn't advance, to bring in the entire sustainable socioeconomic development context, that there are other elements beyond just national policies and local policies that dictate the level of disaster risk, of drought risk, of water-related risk, of social risk, of others. And indeed, bringing in integrated policy, action on climate change, mitigation, adaptation, and really this whole of society approach that is connected, yes, to the Sendai framework, to the 2030 agenda, to the Food Systems Summit, to the Paris Agreement. Policy integration, social integration, all of these elements are required to come to action. As we've seen, the IPCC summary for policymakers, first part of the report will come out today. And just focusing on one element of particulates or on carbon or on one element of emissions is not sufficient. This really is an integrated problem. And this is what we're trying to address and talk about in recent GARs, in the GAR 2019, and indeed in the GAR 2021 Special Report on Drought, which was just released in June this year. This is an unusual slide, and I apologize for this, but I wanted to show the table of contents of the GAR Special Report on Drought because I think it's quite different from many of the kinds of reports that we have typically produced and probably that people who are familiar with drought have ever seen. Because this one begins by talking about the physical and social context of drought. This is sort of the typical part at the beginning, which says that droughts are related to water scarcity. There are flash droughts and mega droughts and cold region droughts. There are compounding factors like compound hazards. There's a human environmental dimension of drought and drought propagation. And that's where the sort of typical part ends. And then we really get into the drought impacts and the drought risk assessment and the management. And these are where it becomes quite interesting because we start talking about things that have not been typically spoken about in relation to drought. The direct impacts of drought are quite light compared to the indirect effects of loss of trade revenue and involuntary migration and change in livelihoods, desertification, the cascading effects of a long-term drought, for example, causes changes in urbanization. It causes changes in agricultural management policy. That has impact on society and the environment, in agricultural production and food security. It has links to pests, public water resource management, water quality. All of these things are not just sort of measuring the SPI or SPEI of a particular region using the space-based technology, but it's integrating that space-based technology to connect to some other elements that are part of what it means to experience a drought. And that's where I guess UNDRR's work and UN SPIDER's work and the work of governments really start to create these overlapping circles of interest, because obviously we would like to avoid drought. We would like to identify droughts before they happen and avoid them. But we also have to understand that there are water and energy production implications to avoiding drought or to creating droughts. There are ecosystems and human health elements. There are cities and urbanization. There are livelihood problems that are all part of this that are not just not easy to see just by taking one picture. This is a really multidimensional problem. And it requires different ways of assessing drought. It requires different ways of thinking about the management of drought that go beyond simply creating a drought observatory necessarily, or having increasingly fine-tuned satellite Earth observation capacities. This is something that really requires integration across rather than increasingly detailed and focused awareness of what the specific physical drivers are. Yes, that's important, but not without understanding how we can solve this, integrating social dimensions, political dimensions, and others. There are a lot of case studies in the report. I've highlighted a few in this slide that do not simply say, you know, this is where the water was, this is where the water is not, now we have a drought. The point of these case studies is really to show that there are transboundary, there are political and social dimensions to drought, there are drought management, regulatory, political dimensions that are part of what creates drought and also part of how we can manage drought. And the case studies are all quite diverse, some of them overlapping regions. I think we have about 20 case studies with a view of really trying to create an understanding of that there are commonalities in China and in Peru and in Australia related to what creates drought and how drought is experienced, and that there are possibilities for learning from each other about how drought can be managed. This is not just UNDRR's problem. This is not just UN Spider's problem. This is not just government's problems. There are decisions that we make every day that push us either more towards risk-informed sustainable development or more towards more risk. Educating and helping and supporting and funding and accountability and reducing and conserving are pushing us more toward that sustainable development. And competition and delaying and destroying and isolating and corrupting and appropriating are those things that are pushing us more towards increasing risk. This is behavior, this is individual behavior, this is private sector behavior, this is public sector behavior, this is transboundary behavior. In some cases, this is behavior that's not specifically manageable by one policy, but something that we really need to be thinking about how everything can be contributing to trying to push us more and more toward that risk-informed sustainable development. That's the theme of the GAR Special Report on Drought. That's the theme of the recent GAR as well. And probably we'll be hearing today about the IPCC report that there is so much more that needs to be done. We must not lose hope, but we must also take very seriously how urgent the challenge is to begin cooperating better and supporting from a multidimensional perspective the management of the drivers of risk and as well as the impacts. I would invite you to visit undrr.org/GAR2021/-drought to have a look at the GAR Special Report on Drought. It was just released in June. We'll have translations into the 6 main UN languages very shortly. There's a summary for policymakers as well. And then it is being translated into a number of other languages over the course of the coming years, the specific languages I'm not quite sure of right now, but I would be really pleased if I could encourage you to go and visit this site, download the report and have a look, because I think there is really something not just for disaster management agencies or for hazard specialists or for even risk specialists. This is something that I think has a lot of benefit for governments, for individuals, for communities. And I'm very grateful for your time this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you so much. I mean, nothing can be better than starting with this very special report, which will really change perception of disaster management, the way we monitor, mitigate, and address the drought-related issue, which is very critical for this particular workshop. I hope you will stay through 2 more presentations and there will be some discussions. I'm requesting all participants, if you have any point need to be addressed or question, please put it in the chat on the side. I will try to take, if not all, few important things also. So thank you, Adam, again. So next one we have somebody whose noise coming. I hope other than speaker, everyone has muted the microphone. The next presentation by Dr. Mahdi from Atmospheric Science and Meteorological Research Center on smart water management tools based on integrated flood and drought management. So Dr. Mahdi, floor is yours.
Dr. Shirish, there is no qualified sound.
What do you mean?
We have problem with the sound.
You want to quickly leave and join again? That's the only way we can do. There is no other way we can fix this now. So, Mr. Mahdi is Dr. Mahdi joining from some other place, or is there in the room? Okay, maybe we can come back. I request Dr. Mahdi to Dr. Mahdi to leave the room and again try to join. Meanwhile, can I take another presentation and then we come back to this presentation? No, he's muted and some kind of noise is coming up. Okay. Well, my request is that Fatima, if you have his local number, because I guess you both are there in the same city, you can call.
Dr. Shirish, Dr. Rahnama is waiting for you. Maybe he doesn't have accessibility for the sound or video.
When he is given access for sharing the screen as a presenter, he can share the screen and have access to camera and microphone at one time. So he could share his slides. So
I'm talking to him on the phone and he's waiting for your side.
He had shared the screen just now. Okay. Emma, can you check if Dr. Mehdi Rahman has the access?
Currently, he's the presenter and he needs to unmute himself. Then he can speak.
I can see Mehdi Rahman is presenter already and
yes,
should be able to share slides.
Yes, just a minute, please, to call on him.
Fatima, can I take next presentation and meanwhile you can call and we can come back to him? Hello, Fatima. Okay, so I request you, Fatima, please call him.
There's an error from that side that they're going to prepare themselves for presenting.
Okay, then I will go for the next presentation and then we can see if error is fixed, we can have his presentation.
Okay, so, no problem.
Yeah. Next presentation is by Dr. Giriraj Amarnath from International Water Management Institute, who also coordinates UN Spider Regional Support Office in Sri Lanka, and he has been one of the most enthusiastic contributor to UN Spider program, and we organize several capacity building programs and advisory missions together. So it's a pleasure to invite Dr. Giriraj to present his topic on managing water availability from flood to droughts. He's covering entire gamut. So Giriraj, floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Suresh, and thanks to UN OSA for inviting International Water Management Institute. And I also thank on behalf of IWMI, the Islamic Republic of Iran, to support this initiative, an important workshop as a consortium of UN OSA and Islamic Republic of Iran. So this is Giriraj Amarnath from the International Water Management Institute, and I look after a research group on water risk to development and resilience program. And the purpose of this particular talk is to highlight the various initiatives, what we do in Africa and Asia when it comes to managing floods and drought. And can I go to the next slide? Yeah. So prior going into the topic, many of you might be new here, knowing first time the International Water Management Institute. It's a member of CJR, Consultative Group of International Agriculture Research. And presently, we are undergoing a major reforms on system transformation at a global level. And some years before IWMI and through the government of Iran, we used to do a lot of programs in specific river basins. And I think it's a great opportunity to collaborate again. And if you look at the strategy, we are water leaders in cross-cutting across to climate change, managing food systems, and also looking at issues in growth and inclusion. So which I would not go more detail, but what is more important and relevant to this initiative is not just about digital technology, but it's equally important to empower farmers and the community there. You need to provide specific economic incentives and also providing multi-scale governance strategy. So I think this particular institute, what we have been looking and what we are looking at disaster risk management, I think it's very critical to look at the cross-cutting elements here. The next slide. So again, we are having a global presence. So we have presence in Asia and Africa, which is what you see. We don't have office in Iran, but we have office closer is Pakistan, India, Nepal, and Myanmar. These are mostly in South Asia and Southeast Asia, likewise in other places in Africa. So next slide. Instead of going more comprehensive about what we do in IWMI in terms of broader program of water adaptation. So this is a program what we look at managing water risk through the monitoring and risk assessment, forecast and early warning. I think the forum is rightly organizing this particular event. And importantly, the technology is widely available, but what is important is also to look at how do we manage the crisis during the disasters period and providing rapid response, and also focusing on how earth observation data can credibly be used by parametric insurance like the risk-based financing instruments. And we also provide a lot of advisory services, whether it could be a farmer-specific information or the broader policy advisory services we provide. So these are the broad and the outline of this presentation in the next slide. So today we will briefly look at monitoring floods and drought early warning information and how do you understand risk and invest in resilience and the broader risk knowledge products that are available from our institute. Now, why this particular picture is very important is earth observation can really play a role directly and indirectly in reducing vulnerability and providing evidences to build long-term resilience. That's how we see, if you look at the climatology data of the last 100 years, climate data is critically important for risk investment and planning adaptation instruments in the country. We also see the three fundamental global agreements, whether it is Paris Agreement or the SDG and the Sendai framework, clearly highlights how earth observation can be instrumental in reducing the risk through better investment, targeted hotspots to be determined. And I think earth observation and modeling tools can potentially be used in the years to come. Next slide. So before I go more broadly, this is a research came from WRI, World Resource Institute, where they really come out at a country level using current and future water risk. Water risk is again integration of various three elements: water scarcity, water security, and the water risk. And if you put together, we will know areas that our countries are under extreme risk. And this is how this map is looking here. And if you look at countries in a large part of North Africa, Middle East, are extremely under high stress to water, and not just dependency on population, but the kind of climate that is expected to come in the years to come in terms of poverty, in terms of issues related to economic development. So I think this really positions how the countries need to promote integrated floods and drought management in the region. The next slide. So while we can talk about the macro assessment of a country level for development donors or the agencies who are joining today in the session, equally important to find out, because the investments cannot be at a larger level. So you need to look at prioritization, sensitize this intervention, and build the role of public-private. So we did an assessment for entire South Asia where we looked at how country level different perils, because you cannot invest on specific hazard. We have to look at multi-hazard. This is a study we have done mainly to provide where the adaptation instruments need to be developed, and in areas where already the food security are quite challenging. And I think this is where these kind of a geospatial data is fundamentally important, to look at past, current, and future climate data and come up with policymakers to really provide sensitized information, what and how and when they should able to do with a specific timeline. I think this data is quite important from our research. Next slide. And then as I go back here, we also looked at the global water related disaster risk again. Look at more on these three major risk: flood, landslides, and drought. We have a more detailed reports on this, which the organizers will share the presentation to you. And again, importance of publicly making this data available. So understanding the risk cannot be just knowing the hazard, but also linking into the Human Development Index, the poverty data, water scarcity region in rain-fed and irrigated system. Lot of other secondary data which you will see in our report points out how data become universally accessible. People can do a multidisciplinary research to come up with how geospatial data are critically important for site prioritization. So that's again a water related risk, how you do a global intervention again from this kind of a research. Next slide. So as I said, that this is again continuing to what we are talking regional to subnational initiative. So if you take issues of drought risk, we can clearly say how the populations and the communities, the infrastructure assets are going to be increasingly going to be vulnerable, and areas that are hotspots, the hotspots in the sense high risk to drought has been mapped by various global forum. And again, integrating this data will help you to come up with the hotspot, not just for knowing the risk, but also develop in the next 30 years, what is our adaptation strategy? Because you need a long-term investments, long-term planning. And that's how the disaster risk reduction is important. That's where we see the global forum is working on SDG, Sendai framework, Paris Climate Agreement, all trying to look at the convergence of providing integrated framework of climate risk management efforts. Next slide. So as we go into more, knowing a hazard is very important, but also how do you integrate that with the production? Because when we take countries in Sri Lanka, I'm representing now from Sri Lanka here in our headquarters. If you see, there is large dependent on farmers is on water, access to water, and also the excess water. That is where your flood. So when you look at a specific crop like maize or wheat or any other crop of your country, you could again use this kind of a risk data of current and future, identifying which are the production risks that are going to be extremely going to be risk in the coming 20 years or in the coming 15 years. So you have various risk scenarios we have developed and identify in a highly water stressed region where the farmers are going to grow a specific crop. It could be a rice or a wheat. You could come with the scenarios and come with what are the decision support need to be done. So I'm just bringing into the observation of how Earth observation data, the climate data, the GIS-based systems can increasingly being used by the policymakers in various parts of the world. And mainly it is useful for agencies like UN or the counterparts coming from development organizations or the philanthropists or the foundation can use this to plan. It cannot be just a 1 year investment to be looked at. What can be done in the next 10 years to 15 years? The next slide. So this will give more granular information what I am talking about here, where you can look at country level assessment, where countries like India is now largely growing the rice crops in a very highly extreme risk. It could be a water stress due to drought, or it could be excess use of groundwater, or in areas where the water is highly deficit. So when you look at all this too much, too little, or too deficit, if you put together this kind of assessment, large section of smallholder farmers are growing the crops in extremely high or high category. On in contrast to countries like France or others, obviously they don't grow a lot of rice, but if you look at their proposition is quite low. So you can do these scenarios for 40 plus crops, which the database we develop using the future risk, and reach out to us. We can happy to share any data if you are interested on. So next slide. So now we go specific to subnational initiatives. These are more global think tank analysis, I would call whatever the slides I was talking about. Now, what is more important is, do we have a sufficient tool where the countries can use and make decision support timely? So the next slide. So what is more important today in the centuries what we live, we have a lot of technologies, a lot of tools becomes very handy. What is lacking is how the institutions have to work together. Like if you look at smart technologies, like everyone have a smartphone, remote sensing data are accessible in cloud, and communities are increasingly using the early warning through their mobile application. And we are also seeing now digitally the surveys are obviously being made, and with the challenges we come across through this COVID pandemic, a lot of digital tools are being increasingly used. But what is lacking is the institutional coordination. And I think the more the technology we are making it more social innovation, I think the development challenges like economic growth, risk management system, where we are talking now machine learning models to really predict well in advance, 3 months in advance, the seasonal forecast, or how do we provide sustainable agriculture, right? We provide a lot of fertilizer or excess use of fertilizer. So obviously, if you use some machine learning models and knowing the weather forecast data, you know when to irrigate, when to provide right fertilizers, etc. I think we are in a better position, but now it's a time that how do you co-develop this interventions with the partners? It could be a public and private sector. That's what I would talk about. I think we are using all of these technologies in our institute, and we will show some of the examples in the coming slides. So next slide. So one of this is, of course, this is now available in PDF, but in the original PPT, you will see animation. So as I was speaking about the AI-based models, so a lot of tools, functionalities, algorithms, all are developed, genetic algorithms, etc. And we are trying to give the best possible uncertainties in the model that is expected to come in the lead time of 7 to 1 month in advance. So these forecasts are even available, flood forecast from the Global Flood Forecast Center, from the Joint Research Center, where the people can even give an alert 1 month in advance, but take it for caution of, I would say, more to use for the 7 days in advance or 5 days. And they are publicly available, important. And if you are using this data with certain validation, and they are increasingly using the ground-based data, if countries can share, the models become more reliable. And then you can use this kind of a ICT platform to alert the societies or the local responder who could alert to those vulnerable societies to move back to flood shelters, or prepare quickly the satellite data like the charter, the International Disaster Charter, the Sentinel Asia. They activate the response map to know where the disaster has really happened. And over years, we are seeing how this data are increasingly being used in risk financing, or what we call the sustainable financing instruments across the users. It could be a community or it could be a government. So we will go more details on that, but the technology is very critical here, but making innovation more to the grassroots level, ensuring the farmers or the communities get empowered by using this technology is very important. Next slide. So here you can see here, we could see from the global models, the technologies from global flood forecast, you can go into a nested fine scale local models to be developed for basins where the global models cannot cover all the river basins of minor floods. So we have set up few about 10 plus minor basin models due to the project we received. And this is again an open source model produced by iCham from Japan, where you can couple the rainfall and runoff inundation model. It's freely available. You could type in Google and find out this model. And we have provided on a daily basis to a weekly basis the flood depth, the flood duration. What is important is you use a bias corrected rainfall product, you use the open source model, and you can hand over these kind of a system quickly to the national system to upgrade, to improve their input data and make sure that they become more reliable, or what we call is the acceptance rate by the national members, so that it becomes operational and it becomes more sustainable for the government to alert timely. So that's a work we done in Sri Lanka and few other countries. Next slide. So moving from flood, we are just going into the drought side, but in insurance, we'll come back to flood. So we have a lot of such drought monitoring programs ongoing. As you can see, the spread in Africa and in South Asia. We have few examples to show for South Asia and Afghanistan for today, to the context where Iran stakeholders can also use these platforms if there is any interest that emerges from this forum. Next slide, please. So what we are talking here is drought management. You have three pillars from the integrated drought management forum developed by the WMO and GWP, where they talk about three pillars. One is monitoring and early warning, vulnerability and impact assessment, and the third set is the mitigation and response planning. I think Earth observation is positioned well across these three pillars: monitoring the remote sensing indices, seasonal forecast or a sub-seasonal forecast, and ensure that these informations are implemented in the sector-wise implementation. We are not just looking at agriculture per se, but look at water, rural sector, energy sector, how this Earth observation data can be used. And if we know over long years, let's say 20 to 30 years of drought monitoring indices, you know where the concurrent or where the areas where the recurrent risk is happening, then you talk about the response plan. So a response plan could be a short and long-term response strategy. So I think Earth observation can really play a significant role, in my opinion, and then aided with some hydrological model, you can capture those severity, whether it's a hydrological drought or agriculture drought, using soil moisture and various indicators. So with time limitation, I'll skip here. Next slide. So what it is very simple is you provide information and actionable data, translating maps into a aided information of what to be done at the ground level. We have demonstrated increasingly how the handheld instruments or the measuring instruments can really play information for farmers to guide, because weather is quite uncertain. So we can't just say we have issued you a alert 1 month in advance, you do something. Because with changes in climate, you need to be with the field, you need to monitor, you need to measure. So the citizen science data is also very important, which we are incorporating in our platform, and making these dashboards or the decision framework to be made to relevant institutions. So we have certain access limitation to institutions to use, because declaring drought, determining droughts are quite sensitive to the governments. So we have dedicated platforms are getting developed, and we were recognized by the geospatial world a year before on how the surveillance systems are quite useful at the ground level. Next slide, please. So moving from there, if you look at now, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, all are entering into this cloud environment, building a large repository of satellite data cube, or what we call is an open data cube, where countries can access and use this data. One such platform we developed for Afghanistan is an early warning system with the World Bank and the government of Afghanistan, where we increasingly seeing, without having any satellite specialists, data management, ICT, various infrastructure where the governments usually invest, we can go into a lot of cloud-based, because you have a lot of high-level security firewalls are there. We have developed this platform, countries are sharing forecast to various other data, and we have this website link, you can take a look later, where the governments are increasingly using more as a committee now. So the Drought Early Warning Committee take these talks and use this information. And I believe that we are in a much more better position now compared to the days where we take a lot of time in data processing, running the system, getting into error by the time the drought is progressing so rapidly. And it could be same for the flood. You can't really use a 20 years old technology and monitor the flood. It needs to be near real time. In 30 minutes, we need a report for policymakers or to the ground responder. I think the cloud systems are increasingly used. So in this case, we use the Google Earth Engine and the Microsoft Azure as a technology for early warning system. Next slide. So yes, I think we do have seen a second set of open access is the Copernicus Sentinel-1 or Sentinel-2 data, where you can see here a farm field level, you can monitor the health of the crop. Again, this is very important. If you know there is a flood has happened or incident of drought is progressing, you need to really know where the crop failures are there. Is there sufficient the farmers are going to recover, because monsoon can happen at any time, or with the delays, or with early monsoon. So farmers can grow at any period in time. So we have this kind of a tool developed. If you look at the next slide, can you go to the next slide? This is for this particular year. So you can look at the areas where colors, where you can see a lot of areas under the very healthy crop. But it's a irrigated system. So even if we see there, it's not very healthy. Very healthy means translating that into a productive yield. But there are also areas where there are crop failures. What we call is a rest in peace. So these areas where the crop was starting, but it never recovered. So those areas where the crop has completely lost. And I think using these technologies, you can really plan well in advance what's the likely yield is going to be expected in a system. So that's where I think the digital tools are increasingly going to be used by the government, and also educating that to the farmers level interventions on that. So can we go to the next slide? So now moving into the last segment is about investing in financial resilience, because we talked about early warning, management of using this data. Now risk is going to be there in any part of the region, whether it is landslides or earthquake or floods and drought. But how do you invest better in resilience strategy? That's what we have done. Few case studies. Can we look on next slides? So this is one graph that really shows what we call in insurance term called the protection gap. So this is a data coming from Munich Re, where they looked at over years. The darker blue is basically the insured losses, and the uninsured losses are the light blue. So in terminology, this is the overall capital loss any country is going to go if there are major floods and drought is going to happen. So in one particular year, we are seeing 400 plus disaster are happening. Exceptionally this year, a lot of reporting of natural disaster globally is happening. So I believe this year is going to be again a mega disaster events. And if you look at here, that the bar graph of red, what you are showing is a huge deficit. So any government which losses, which they are not insuring, this much is going to go as a fiscal deficit. If that fiscal deficit is happening, means the investment goes in adaptation is double the or triple the cost of disaster losses is happening. So it means that one time you have an investment, but 3 times you have a disaster. So it means what kind of developments we are talking about. It could not be improving or reducing the poverty, improving income. It's all not cannot be achieved because the kind of fiscal deficit what this graph is explaining. So to do that, the next slide. So this is again a map prepared much earlier, some years back. If you can see here, countries in developed countries where you can see regions are highly insured. But when you look at developing regions, a lot of places are still inadequate insurance is available. It could be a non-life insurance we are talking about. So this is again quite a good example to show countries need to insure, transfer the risk, because as long as you keep the risk with you, the fiscal deficit is going to grow each year. The kind of calamities it is going to come from the natural disasters. Next slide. So what is more important for, because insurance, when we term, it goes more into the private sector insurance company. There are few public sector insurance companies exist for non-life insurance. But when you look at the kind of disasters we are talking about, floods or drought, we do have better data, but for flood, we don't have a lot of risk modeling data is available. And for global
3 minutes, please.
Yeah, I'll just wrap up in 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So this is again an insurance potential. What I'm talking about, the types of floods we have, there is lack of data is available. And I think for insurance company, without having credible data, largely that can be filled using earth observation and model data without having much of ground data currently there. Can we go to the next slide? So I think parametric insurance is the one where it's a way forward in places where you don't have comprehensive damage information is not there. So I believe data is a very essential step for not just for private sector, but also to the local communities to understand what risk are they undergoing and how the insurance company can design a better product. And also where government can really reduce their burden of providing relief year on year. And in a year, you might have multiple disasters over January to December. So government need to really plan using such technologies. Next slide. So one such platform we developed or a solution we developed is called the index-based flood insurance. We use what we call is open source computer models for calculating the flood depth and duration. Satellite data can become very handy to validate those inundation model. We tested over 7,000 plus household in India and Bangladesh. And again, this is a proven solutions. We have provided a claim by the insurance company directly to those communities over 150,000 US dollar. And we are scaling over 100,000 household from starting early this year onwards. And we are increasingly counting to scale such interventions in other parts of the regions where floods are recurrently happening. Next slide. So the key message I would say is the forum like this one is very important, that we look at regional cooperation, strengthening the use of space technology and providing thematic solutions in water, agriculture and disaster sector, where you can proactively provide a resilient strategy. That's very important. And I think in all those knowledge products, what you see is a varied level of institutions are involved. So I think we need to really aggregate institutional coordination, where we talk about multi-scale governance strategy is very important, and products need to be increasingly made robust, accurate and reliable for the policymakers. And a forum like this providing a capacity among stakeholders is also building a lot more new innovation for those countries to scale up those interventions. So with that, I thank the organizer for giving this opportunity. And I did share my email ID. And if you are having any questions or any opportunities to be discussed, reach out to us. And thanks again, Dr. Sirish Ravan, for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Giriraj. A very comprehensive coverage of your presentation, right from international, regional to national, and also covering the insurance related part and how specific solutions from the space can be really useful for the national players. I think it's very comprehensive presentation and there's a lot to learn from your presentation. So we'll take one more presentation, and I hope we'll not, I guess not much time will be left for discussion, but let's try if we can come back for a second, not very like quick for 5 minutes or so. So let us see if Dr. Mahdi Rahnama can connect to us now.
We are very sorry.
نه جان صدای منو باز میکنی؟ Hello everyone, Dr. Shirish.
Yes, please.
We are very sorry, but it is not possible to have Dr. Rahnama for this session due to some unexpected technical issues, but we will definitely have him in the following sessions tomorrow or 2 days later.
Okay. I think there is some gap in session 4 or something. We'll see if some speaker is missing and we can accommodate him there. We'll get back.
Yeah,
okay,
thank
good.
You.
So thank you so much. And I'm sorry that this presenter cannot come now, but maybe later is fine. I think it's important study as well on the smart water management tools. I think we can now easily afford at least 5 minutes for some discussions. So, okay, everybody is asking if presentation can be shared, and we will make presentation available on our website after the workshop, maybe within 3-4 days or so. You will, and everyone can download the presentations. Okay, I see one question there. What are the difficulties encountered during development and implementation of DMS? Is the stakeholder management and engagement was challenging? So I think this is quite a generic question. And then another question. Oh, it's the same question. So I read it out again for our both panelists. What are the challenges encountered during development and implementation of smart water management tools in the background of rapid climate change? So what I would do is I will not ask any specific question, but maybe I will give floor to first to basically Giriraj to comment on this, and then Adam, if you don't get any specific question, I don't see, but I would like you to explain if you can talk something about, do you have any further planned initiative after Drought 2021 report? Where space communities or disaster management community can benefit. But shall we Okay, since you are already on the camera, maybe we can start with you and then Giriraj can come back. Up to you.
Sorry, I'm not seeing the question. The question is whether we have a plan to produce other reports like this one?
No. There might be a lot of recommendations coming out of drought report, and you probably may like to see how countries are progressing or what changes will happen, the way drought was seen and monitored, and anything that can benefit the space community on those aspects in upcoming through events or programs or anything that.
Yeah, I think there are going to be a number of opportunities, both at sort of national level and then in global level, but space agencies tend to be focused at national level for the most part. And I think that we'll start to see more and more opportunities. UNDRR is, I guess, piloting right now a series of projects that will have us go into, I mean, we're a non-resident agency in most countries, which means that we don't have a national presence in most countries. We're a headquarters and regional office organization. But we're trying to work with some countries, I think it's going to be 15 over the next 2 years, to work with the United Nations country team, the resident coordinator's office, the rest of the development team, to identify specific risks of interest in those countries, I guess both natural hazard related as well as hopefully other kinds as well, and then build up sort of SWAT team partnerships inside those countries with national institutions like space agencies, like private sector organizations who are interested in those countries, as well as other development partners, agriculture agencies and water management agencies, to say, all right, if we would like to really zoom in on risk to agricultural production from water shortages, what are the sources of information we would need to dig into deeply to understand what drives that risk? What are the sources of capacity that we have to manage that risk, and how can we leverage those to solve that risk? The point of those projects, though, is not really to solve one specific thing and flip one small switch, but rather to start to develop a muscle. Building up a muscle takes a bit of time, takes a bit of repetition. So if we do that in one particular case, in one particular country, say we focus on a risk, we solve the problem as clearly as it can be solved, let's say. Risk is not something to be solved necessarily. But then we start to build up the muscle that enables those partnerships to reduce risk more proactively and not just related to that one specific case, but okay, what about damage to school buildings from floods? Okay, and what about damage to trade from pests? And really start to take a more evolutionary approach towards doing that. I think that that's something that is an exciting step that we're trying to catalyze, but it's not something that space agencies or any government agency needs to wait for. This is something that if we really do take a bit more expansive approach towards employing the tools that we have to understanding the problems that we have and reducing the risks that we currently know about, which is to say nothing of the ones that we don't yet know, that's something that can happen proactively in any country at any time. This is, and I think it's happening more and more, but I really hope that the special report and the GARs give inspiration to those countries where we're not yet able to work directly, to say, look, we have all of these space-based Earth observation capacities, and we're still just measuring SPI or SPEI. Why aren't people using that? What could it be used for? What else could we measure that would be useful? What else could we be indicating that would help people make better decisions? And understanding what the problems are before we start throwing solutions onto the table.
Thank you. I think that's a great insight, and it is really helpful for the space community to get engaged in those initiatives, and we don't have to wait for it. So thank you, Adam. Giriraj, I think there are two questions bit on technical side. If you can address those, I hope you can read the chat, so I don't have to read it out. So Giriraj, you can just respond comprehensively in next 3 minutes.
Which question I should respond?
So first, someone asking about the challenges encountered. What are the challenges encountered during development and implementation of smart water management tools with the background of climate change and AI tools and other things, how they are used.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Suresh, to pointing out. I think there is quite a good reflection were given by Adam on the challenges what he has already highlighted. I would just take up this particular question. When we say smart water management tool, today I think we have seen some of my presentation. We talked about various technologies and tools are there. What is missing in some part of the world is where we bring these tools more adaptable, institutionalized, and making it more proof by the end user. Often we come with some tailored product and hand over to the agencies, and there are lack of funding available when it comes to sustainable. And there were question of about rapid climate change. I think the capacities need to be enhanced in the countries. It's not just about talking about tools. There are plenty of tools are available. We need to be in a time where we talk about those implementation as a more holistic institutional process and ensure there is co-financing investments are available for those agencies to look at challenges. And the other set of challenges is the growing technology also brings a lot of challenges to customize, modernize. For example, we see every year there is a lot of new satellite launch and we would like to use, and the algorithms cannot be straightly used. So we need to keep providing. That's what my point is about. Having a capacity on a regular basis is very important. And I do want to highlight the last question also raised by someone on Human, like the strategy is followed for on the first priority, etc. So I think now what we have seen is the many of the countries after the launch of SFDRR or the SDG, we have seen that many of the national programs are now strategized to the global efforts, whether it is a Sendai framework. Now many countries are increasingly promoting or establishing the early warning system, providing establishing the automatic weather station, and also looking at how do you provide a lot more thematic disciplines in agriculture, land use, etc. I think countries recognizes that unless you don't provide a risk reduction strategy, SDGs cannot be achieved. It is just an indicator. So the indicator has to be achieved. You need to look at the community level. How do you respond to those risks that keep happening in a region? What development challenges you need to be provided? But it really becomes a framework for countries to take it forward, monitor and evaluate those indicators. I think this is where again a satellite data can become more transparent in the years to evaluate those platforms. Over to you, Sirish.
So thank you, Giriraj. I think you have addressed all these questions, and it is time to end this session. So